So, welcome back to another episode of the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast with me, Nick, and my mate Dom. This is episode 12, and we're going to talk about the new stadium experience, but also what does a new stadium do for a club? So, whilst we're honoured to have Dom here as an Everton season ticket holder, but also a Middlesbrough season ticket holder. And for those who don't know the backstory, I'm a Middlesbrough season ticket holder too, and that's where we met 10 years ago. Dom's in a unique position, having been to Ayresome Park and then the Riverside in 1995, and obviously being a Goodison fan for a long time, and then moving to the Hill Dickinson this season. But we're not just going to talk about those two, far from it. We're going to look at the likes of Brentford, Spurs, West Ham, Brighton, Arsenal, City, the stadium like for Sunderland, even Millwall going back to 1993. What does a new stadium mean, and what does it do for the fan experience? So this is episode 12. I'm going to take you through and introduce you to Dom now. And Dom, I'm assuming, is going to give us his usual introduction to episode 12. Without further ado, Dom, welcome back to the Half and Half Scarf podcast.
Yeah, great to be here, Nick. Yeah, I can't believe it's episode 12. I can't believe it. Andy, that's just for you. We thought we'd put you in that you always can't believe that I can't believe what episode it is. I think I'm going to stick to this every single time from now on. So you'll probably be hearing me saying, I can't believe it's episode 546.
And just for the record, Andy Newbold is a regular listener. He's a friend of mine as well, Huddersfield fan. So we appreciate the support, Andy, and we appreciate the I can't believe it's not butter reference point for Dom's usual intro. But as we always do on YouTube, quick, and I mean a quick look, I am wearing today, in honour of Middlesbrough going to Preston on Saturday. We're recording this on the Thursday night before the Saturday after the international break kicks back in. Middlesbrough are taking 5,600 fans to Preston, and that includes myself and my son, Rob. And I'm wearing the away shirt because I've worn it twice so far this season, and we've won both times. I've got my lucky shorts, my cargo shorts. I'm hoping it stays warm because I'm wearing them as long as we keep winning. And yeah, it's the new away shirt. I quite like it. It's quite slick, and fingers crossed for a third away victory on the bounce on Saturday. But by the time this goes out, people will know whether that's true or not. And Dom, you've got a Sport Pezza sponsored Everton shirt. Looks a little bit like a coach seat for me, mate, but you love it, don't you?
I do like it, yeah. I know what you mean about the coach seat. It's 2019-2020 season, last Umbro kit before we went to Hummel, and it's got some sort of soft, criss-crossy style lines in it, which is to represent the Archibald Leach design at Goodison. Not a big fan of the sponsor, obviously, but I quite like the kit. I do quite like this one. It's nice. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, for those who don't watch on YouTube, we always get that out of the way quickly, but people seem to like the shirts that we choose. And let's get on with stadium experiences, new stadiums, the fan experience, etc. But I'm going to lay my cards on the table. I do like a proper old football ground. I know you loved Goodison, right? But I used to love going to Griffin Park, for example, at Brentford as an away fan. I still like the Hawthorns. I still like the City Ground at Forest. Villa Park's fantastic, particularly under the lights. And even Carrow Road, I'm not saying they're ancient, but they're proper traditional, football grounds. And I really like them. I put here less so Burnley, and the less said the better about Elland Road, but both need significant upgrades, and certainly for the away fans. And Ayresome Park wasn't a great away fan experience. So I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I do like an old ground, but let's talk about new stadiums and particularly the fan experience. How's it been so far at Hill Dickinson for you at Everton, Dom? Just very briefly, because I know we've touched on it at previous ones. How's the fan experience been so far for the fans, not just for you, do you think?
I think it's been a success so far. Always helped by having a good start to the season, particularly at home. 2 good games in the league and the cup. I think it's enhanced by the fact that we've had a good pre-season in terms of signings. I think that's what, a new stadium is one thing, but it is what the fans bring to it. So if the fans bring momentum, excitement, the team deliver, it's everything. So far, it's got off to a really good start, mate. And they've tried to design it like a proper football stadium, and it feels like a proper football stadium in terms of all kinds of little nuances, which we may be able to go into. But yeah, so far so good. I was very nervous about it, but it's felt good as we've got going. There's going to be bumps along the way, I'm sure, But I think what helps any new stadium is how well the team play and what the fans get behind. So long may that continue. But there'll be bumps in the road.
Well, I heard the other day, obviously, West Ham have been in the London Stadium, as they call it. It's a really inventive name, isn't it, for that? They've been in there since 2016. We all know it's not a football stadium. We all know it's not ideal, and most West Ham fans hated the idea of it. But we'll come on to that later. But I heard the other day that quite a few West Ham fans over the last 9 years still go to their pre-match rituals near Upton Park or the bowling ground, as it was suddenly called for about 3 seasons before it was
Yeah.
closed. But they still go to the old pie and mash shops. They still go to the local pubs at Upton Park, and then taxi the way over or make their way over to the London Stadium. And I'm just intrigued really about match day rituals and routines and superstitions. Football fans are very superstitious, aren't they? Some
Mm.
of them are, me particularly, when it comes to football. Nothing else but football. Um, what's the routine and ritual going to be like? How long does it take to build that in a new environment like the Hill Dickinson? Because you've been going to Goodison for 25 years. You'll have done pretty much the same thing every match, I would have thought, involving a pie, I would imagine.
Yeah.
What's it? How's it going to feel to get into a routine at a new place, completely different part of the city?
Um, yeah, I think it's going to take some time. I think me and Mia, my daughter, have kept an open mind on this one. We just knew from the off it's going to take a bit of time, and we're going to kind of enjoy seeing what we like and what we don't like. So we've done bits of going in and getting a pie in the ground, which will cost you the price of a small mortgage. Um, and on the cup game, we actually went into town because obviously we get the train now, and we got takeout, so we just got pie, chips, gravy, and peas, and walked eating that to the ground, which was really nice because there's nowhere really doing that outside the ground yet. There's a few establishments saying they're doing it, but you've got to go in a building and get a drink and do all that. And I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure over time you can already see places popping up, takeout places popping up, bars, venues. It's like a good 25-minute walk from the centre of town. So I think over time we're just going to enjoy seeing where we like hanging out and who we're meeting.
Hmm.
Got loads of different mates, so it depends what they're doing and what we fancy doing. So at the moment, it's kind of very transient, and we're just going with it. We're just kind of enjoying the freedom of not having a set routine, mate. Because I don't think you can at the moment.
No.
Even getting into the ground and I haven't even had a full wander around the ground yet. Because by the time you get there, it's just so busy and so packed, and they cordon off like the western terrace, which faces out onto the Mersey and looks over onto the Wirral, as the players arrive. So we're probably going to do that one day where we get there really early and walk around. But yeah, I mean, I know where you're coming from. We always go and do the same things. We get the same bottle of pop, the same sweets, pie, same place.
Yeah.
Mia's really a big ritualistic person in terms of things she wears and stuff like that, depending on how the team perform and all the rest of it. At the moment, we're just kind of going with the flow. Mia's sticking to what she's doing, wearing stuff, but it'll change as we go along.
How long do you reckon it'll be, do you think, before you find that kind of rhythm, as I would call it, for the day? We park here, well, we get off the train here,
Mm,
we walk this way, we drop in here, we buy our food here,
yeah.
we do, are we talking about you've got a season or so, do you think, before you think, right, let's review it and see, or is it just instinctive? It's interesting to me how it works because it's just not just you, it's thousands and thousands of other fans, and
Yeah.
it's the local businesses as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've got a real good opportunity in the walk from 25 minutes from the city centre to the Hill Dickinson. But what about the poor buggers who've had 150 years or whatever outside near Goodison, who are fish and chip shops and pie
Yeah.
shops and pop shops and crisp shops and all that kind of thing, and pubs and cafes? It really intrigues me as to they're going to close down, and what's going to happen to them, and
Well,
it's
it's an interesting one, mate. The Winslow, which is the pub on Goodison Road, just literally outside the main stand. Um, they're doing a thing where if you go there pre-match, you can pay like a fiver, and they've put on a bus service, so they'll take you to the ground. I think things like that are really good. It was never part of my ritual to go for a drink before the game.
Yeah.
It was just never. We had a different ritual, but I love that idea, and I like that people have supported it on social media and got it out there.
Okay.
The Hot Walk is a takeaway out, near the old club shop and just outside the ground. Everyone went there either pre or post match. They're coming to Hill Dickinson there. I think they're renovating and going to do a premises there.
Oh,
So, but there's lots of other takeouts. And to be honest, I think they'll probably do just fine because they've been there anyway and they're there, 365 days of the year. So they must do well,
yeah.
unless, of course, the match days are their bonanza days and that's what sees them through. So, yeah, that's a bit of an unknown for me. I don't know what the impact will be on them, and I hope everything's going to be okay because I think that is a big thing. It's good that the women are going to be at Goodison. Granted, the crowds aren't going to be as big and it's smaller, but I think that does help. Not quite sure in terms of what their business drop off would be or how big the match days are in reliance to what their yearly income is and in the survival of their business. But around the Hill Dickinson, from when it first started being built, you can see how things have evolved and bars have been built. There's a hotel building being renovated. It's going to be a hotel. And you can see all the way along how it's popping up. And there's a few real old establishments like, the Murphy's Distillery and the 10th Street Social, which have been there a long time. And, they'll keep going and doing really well. The Bramley-Moore pub, literally outside the ground, must be like singing Eureka because, they'll be doing a sterling trade on match day. But
Can I just ask, Tom, was that Bramley-Moore pub, has that been there for like 100 years type thing?
Oh, it's been there a long, long time, yeah. And they've just had a facelift and a lick of paint, and they've now gone from being like green signs to blue. So they'll be doing really well on that. It's heaving outside the ground there.
Yeah.
But you've also got lots of bars and different things inside the ground, and not tried it yet, but I think in the South Stand you can stay for an hour or so after the game. A bit like at Middlesbrough, which I like if you want to stay for a pint.
Yeah.
At Goodison, you couldn't really do that unless you're in hospitality where they just kind of kick you out. And I do like that.
Okay.
But it's evolving as you go along because it's taking longer to kind of get in the ground, even though it's like a digital ticket. You literally just blip it. So I think people are struggling with that. But I've had a digital ticket for years, so it's not an issue. There's a lot of queues at the for food inside. Mind you, I haven't said that. I'm not quite sure why everyone's buying food. It literally cripples you price wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's evolving, mate, and I do think it's going to take a bit of time for it to feel like home. But it's funny how quickly it can feel familiar. Just that new thing of getting off the train at the same place.
Yeah.
The walk becomes a routine. I've done it for 2 test events and 2 games now. We're only 4 games in, but it's starting to feel a bit like a routine.
Okay.
Probably could take the car, but I think that would take away from the enjoyment because it's a bit of you'd have to get there really early, drive down the road, find a little car parking space. It's not really worth it. And after the game, it's partly cordoned off. It's literally powered with fans. I think the enjoyment is getting off a train and walking and having the freedom to just do what you want. You can stop along the way and get pints. I think that's what's going to be fun, is just seeing how it evolves and seeing what we really like as time goes on, mate.
Okay, you mentioned a couple of things I'd like to pick up on there. One, I assumed that modern stadiums, new stadiums with better regulations have got better access, but not necessarily the case. We went to Spurs away. I didn't go when we were in the FA Cup because it was a midweek game and you only get like a week's notice. I was working.
Yeah.
A friend of ours, Julie, went. She said the away end was terrible, in terms of crammed and getting drinks and all that kind of thing. So despite the fact that being a relatively new stadium in 2019, that wasn't a great away fans experience. But digital ticketing. Now, I heard Andy Jacobs on TalkSport. I love Hawksby and Jacobs. I'm a big fan. And Andy said they've just introduced digital ticketing at Brentford this season, compulsory digital ticketing.
Yeah.
A bit like we've had options at Middlesbrough for a while. You've used yours at Everton for a while as well as Middlesbrough. But it's non-transferable at Brentford. So if you got a digital ticket at Brentford and you want to give your ticket to somebody else, a friend of yours or whatever, in your absence. You can't do it. It goes back into a ballot that the club can then resell. Now, I think that's criminal because it's your ticket. You should be able to do what the hell you want with it, really. Whether you want to upgrade it for somebody or you want to downgrade it to a kid or whatever, it's your ticket. You've paid for it. And because it's digital at Brentford, they cannot, under any circumstances, share that ticket with anybody else. It's your ticket for you, or it goes back to the club. Um, can you share your tickets
Yeah,
digitally at Everton?
yeah. You can if you're not going to go, you can sell it back to the club. They'll deduct it off your season card
Yeah.
and reimburse you for the money and just sell it on. Or you can allocate it to someone in your friends and family list and just digitally allocate it to them. So you can do it that way.
Yeah.
The other thing is you can eat like so. Me and Mia both have digital tickets, so depending on what Mia's doing, and she goes to nearly every one, but there's the odd one where she can't. So then that's when my other daughter comes along.
Yeah.
So I tend to keep both of them on my phone
Yeah.
because that's the other problem. Once they're on a phone each, if you take, you can't then just suddenly take it off a phone and load it back onto someone else's phone. So
Ah.
there is quirks, and it is quite nice sometimes having a card because you can just literally give it to anyone and they can
Yeah.
turn up, scan it, and off you go. I would quite like it that you could just have. I'd like the facility that you could that let you load the ticket onto multiple phones at least, because that would help. And
Yeah.
it's still that person's ticket, and it's still loaded per game, so you can't do any damage with it or take the piss with it. You can't do anything untoward.
You can't go
But
in three. You can't go in three times with it
three
on the
times
same game,
exactly, no,
can you? You
exactly,
know.
you
Yeah.
can't. But I do know a lot of people who are old school who just like having a physical card ticket. And at Everton, if you explain why you want one, they will give you one. I
Yeah.
think you have to pay for it. So whereas before in the old days it would just be given to you. And strangely, Everton used to release a new one every year. You get a brand new card every year. They
Yeah.
don't do that at Borough, which I think is they just reload your
Yeah.
existing
Yeah.
card. But I think you have to pay like a 10 or 10 or 15 quid. But you can do it. I know there's a lot of people who like it. But it's amused me the first couple of the games because there's been queues as long as your arm, and it's like Christ, you're just literally blipping your phone like you're paying for something on Apple Pay. It's really quite simple.
It'll be like an episode of Last the Summer Wine, mate, won't it? You know, you're expecting people like to Foggy Dewars to go down a bloody hill
Yeah,
in a tin bath.
yeah,
How does this
yeah,
work? I've never done this
yeah,
before. You literally are Apple paying
yeah,
your
yeah,
way into your stadium, aren't you? Anyway, I've put here ticket pricing in general be higher because you're paying for the facilities. The
yeah.
concourse experience is posher facilities, higher prices. Any improvement in food? Probably not. Probably the same food.
They reckon Everton claim that the food is of a slightly higher standard. I mean, you could
Hang on,
possibly argue.
can I stop you there? Slightly higher standard. I mean, that's like as tenuous. It's a
Well,
slightly higher standard
well, they
pie.
reckon it is higher standard. I mean, they're saying it's all sourced locally, and and everything's been elevated up. I've got to say the steak pie and the cheese pie. The cheese pie, I'm not a fan of. I
Yeah,
prefer the one we had at Goodison, and even the steak pie. It's nice, but it's not the end of the world. I
yeah,
mean, the prices at Goodison were expensive. I think it's like £4.8. I mean, I sound like probably I am on. I was born on the border of North Yorkshire, so I am probably that way inclined. But I thought 4.80 was steep, but £6.20 is just taking the piss.
yeah,
£11 for a hot dog, £6.50 for a donut. It's just a joke, mate.
yeah.
And the club sent surveys out of what felt was good or bad, and I just said you're literally robbing fans in plain sight. It's literally let's just name a price and they'll pay it. And it's like, well, they might, but will they keep paying it? I think people will get tired of paying those prices. And
Mm,
I think there was something, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm fairly certain I read that you can't take your own food in. We used to
right.
always take just a bottle of pop and some sweets, and you could
Yeah.
walk in if you had a takeaway. You could walk in with your own chippy. Whether they'll let you do that now, I mean, obviously they don't let alcohol in, all that. I get that, but I am going to try with a bottle of pop and some sweets next home game, because if they confiscate them, it's like you are literally holding everyone to ransom here.
Well, it's a bit like going to cinema, isn't it? Where you sneaking your own drinks in because the pick and
Yeah,
mix is about £85 an ounce or something. Anyway, I've got here Spurs have got their own brewery and they've got a cheese room.
yeah,
I've just put what the fuck for that. Really, I'm just
yeah,
not whatever. Someone's paying for that, aren't they? A bit that got me intrigued. you've spent years building relationships with people around you, and I know
Yeah,
I know you're a miserable get sometimes, so you're not really, but you're a lovely guy at the football. But that's how you and I met. But you've built relationship with people around
yeah,
at Goodison. But when they allocated the season tickets to your new stadium, it was
yeah,
based on a first come points basis. So
and
you're now scattered around. So
yeah,
can I ask you? Have you maintained those connections? Have you got a WhatsApp group, or are you
yeah,
meeting people before the afterwards, or how's it going? Because it's such an important part of the fan experience. I think is the people you sit with, even though you probably don't even know the names of some of these people. You know them, and you shake hands with them, and you nod, and how you doing, and all that. And when someone's missing, you're thinking, I hope they're not very, I hope they're on holiday and
yeah.
not ill. And you've built those relationships. What's it been like for you with that
Strange,
scattered
very
approach?
strange. It's been good though. It's mixed. Yeah, we'd sat where in when I started taking me, we've sat there for 13 years, and some people have come and gone, but there's been some mainstays and other people who've joined several years in, and we are on first name terms. Got to know everyone really, really well,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, we could have all perhaps taken the decision that we'd all sit together, but you'd have been waiting until the last man, basically. So I had first dibs because of my tenure. I had to wait for Mia. Um, she had 13 years, but it was a bit harsh on Mia because she's been going since she's 6.
Yeah,
And so her tenure is really, really long in terms of her age and how long she could have been going for.
yeah,
But because she just moved up to a young adult, she didn't get like they gave kids up to the age of um, I think it was 17 enhanced tenure. So she'd have probably got another 4 or 5 years on that. And the club was just trying to do it to please everyone. I just felt they should have just said, your tenure's your tenure. That's
yeah.
it. Get on
Mm.
with it. So yeah, we could have all perhaps made a decision and said, right, we'll all sit together and sit there. But then I think people just wanted to branch out and try different things. There was some of my mates have got teenage lads. They wanted to kind of rite of passage into the new South Stand. So I see a good mate of mine and his son. They're in the South Stand now. We met them before the first game. Went and had stood with them where they stand. I can literally wave to them from where we sit. We've got Wi-Fi in the ground now, so you can just text and say, "I'm
Yeah,
waving at you." Another mate of mine is literally waving distance to the right. I've got another mate who I sat next to for years, who's just above me. We're not all sat together, but we can kind of see each other. And there's a
yeah.
few that I've not been in touch with yet, but I literally need to, and we will, and we'll meet before or after the ground at some point. We'll find a way of connecting and keeping it ongoing. But I am missing it. Yeah, it's hard,
Can I be
definitely.
can I be cynical about that last statement you made there? We will keep in touch. We will get in touch. We all say that about holiday friends, don't we? I know you've invested more than a holiday friend in 13 years of meeting these
Yeah,
people. The likelihood is one or two will drop away, won't they? And then you've got new people who'll
Yeah,
come
I
in. But
think they
yeah,
will. Yeah, I mean, there's you know a lot of these people. They are just people we see at the footy, but we keep in touch and we message during holidays and we chat and
yeah,
they are really good match day buddies. Um, and I hope that continues. Yeah, the odd one might fall away.
mm.
I'm pretty good at keeping in touch with people and just messaging them. I'm really good at that.
Yeah. I've
And
noticed,
the
mate.
odd and you know, I'll message people and then if I get a response, that's great. If people drop away and they don't respond, there's nothing you can really do about that, is there?
No,
So
that's
you'll
fair.
probably just bump into them. So I think just we're still kind of learning who's around us. To be honest, I definitely know who's sitting to the right of us because it's a guy and his two teenage sons, and I've chatted to them a bit. And I think as time goes on, we'll get on really well. And they seem really nice.
Okay.
Other than that, I think it's kind of it's been evolving a bit. So first home game of the season in the summer, some people might not go. The cup game, some people don't go to the cup game. So I think over the coming weeks, we'll really see. Right, okay, you're here every week, and you'll
Yeah.
just slowly start chatting away, and it does feel strange, mate. Yeah,
Okay.
it's different. Yeah,
Well, let's move on from the Hill Dickinson and Everton. Now, I've got a number of stadiums written down here. So I've got like
yeah,
Brentford G Tech. I've already put them on there for the reason of the digital ticketing, and it's a new stadium, and it's proving to have kind of a negative effect on some people, thinking that we're now captives to our season ticket, and it's they've kind of introduced something they're not happy with. But they did say, to the credit, Brentford said to Andy Jacobs and the team there, it was in fan consultation. The stadium that intrigues me the most is Spurs. because they didn't really move, did they? They sort of
No.
moved. They moved about 200 feet up the road, didn't they? And built a brand
Yeah.
new sort of stand and everything. Um, Not everyone can do that because they just can't. You know, Amex at Brighton. I mean, obviously the With team was a wreck, but Brighton Amex is brand new. Arsenal Emirates is fairly round the corner from
Yeah.
Highbury, but obviously, you know, brand new stadium like Sunderland, you know, built on a bit of it looks like, feels like a bit of an island just on the edge of the weir. The Borough at the Riverside Stadium, and the old Den versus the new Den. I don't really know geographically where the old Den was. I've been to the new Den a couple of times, but
Yeah.
the new Den is. I mean, it's a pretty clean, crisp little stadium, but apparently the old Den was a bit of a dangerous place to go. So, you know, I think that was probably these things happen. People move, and I guess the one I'd like to explore is Newcastle are planning an increased capacity for their stadium, and there's not much space around St James's Park if you know the area. Fans would prefer to stay there, I think, and do something like Spurs did if they could, you know, sort of expand, maybe go and play somewhere else for a season or two while
Yeah.
they did that. But I think they're going to have struggles with that, or they're going to have to move somewhere else, perhaps, you know, into Lees's Park or, you know, onto the moor or something like that. What would you feel if you're a Newcastle fan about losing that history and moving versus trying to do a Spurs? Because I think Spurs have got it right, you know,
Yeah. I do.
because there's no match day routine changes. That you go into
No.
the same place. But it was they played at Wembley for 5 seasons or 3 seasons, didn't they, I think? So what do you reckon for Newcastle? What would you be hoping for them as a fellow football fan? What would you hope for them?
I'd I'd hope for them that if they can expand St James's and make it bigger on that site, that you would. I would always recommend and support clubs being able to expand and renovate where they actually are. You know, Goodison's a magnificent ground, but it just couldn't be built upon. You just couldn't make it bigger. There was just
Mm.
no way to do it. You'd have had to have knocked down all the houses and the pub behind the main stand on the Gladys Street. You landlocked behind the Bullens Road. You couldn't do it. You'd have had to have knocked down so many people's homes.
Mm.
You know, Anfield, they managed to, buy the homes behind the Anfield Road end. Um, a lot of those homes were neglected. I think disrepair, and I think they were able to, over time, slowly buy the land to be able to make that bigger, and
Yeah.
they're slowly regenerating that area. But around Goodison, they're all lived in. They're not neglected. These are all people, so you just couldn't do it. But everyone would have loved to have stayed there if we'd been able to do that. So my first protocol would always be, stay where you are. I mean, St James's Park is a fabulous ground, and it's the fans. It's just synonymous, isn't it? The two just go hand in hand. You wouldn't really want them to move if they didn't need to.
No.
But you know, if they've got demand for tickets there, they sell out all the time. The stadium's huge anyway, but they obviously they've got a demand for more, and they obviously want to capitalise on that. I'm with you. I was always of the opinion it was fairly landlocked. I'm not quite sure where they'd move to or how they'd be able to do it, but yeah, to Lees's Park, where they'd have to buy into there
Mm.
and do it. But I think if the club could do it, you'd probably try and stay as keenly as you can on site to try and keep it as St James's Park.
He's something controversial. Look at ground share with Sunderland for a couple of seasons, couldn't it? That'd go down.
Well,
That'd go down well.
do you remember when everyone was talking about Everton Liverpool ground share? And it's like, yeah, maybe it could be done. The Milan clubs do it, but it just,
That's interesting though, because it is done in Milan and it is
yeah,
done in other cities. It's
yeah, it
done in
is.
other places, and the San Siro feels like home to both
Both
Inter
clubs.
and to
Yeah,
AC.
if
So
they do it, it works, doesn't it? You'd think it'd be like absolutely abhorrent to both clubs, but they've just adopted it and got on with it, and they almost must keep it very separate in terms of it's ours, it's theirs, but we'll treat it as ours, in
yeah,
our way. They'll treat it as theirs in their way. I get it. I do totally get it. I think you'd probably, if it was suddenly thrust upon you, I think you'd just get used to it. You'd do it. But would you choose to? Never in a million years. No.
I think we're tribal over here, but the Italian football fans are
God,
equally
yeah.
equally
Yeah,
tribal, aren't they? Roma and Lazio, they hate each other, don't they? Anyway,
absolutely.
okay. I've got a couple of questions here. Um, what does it take for a stadium to feel like home? And when do you think the stadiums like the, let's take the Etihad and let's take the Emirates and let's take Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, because I don't think West Ham will ever say the London Stadium feels like home. It just doesn't feel like a
No.
football stadium. And I'm sorry, West Ham fans, it isn't. I've been the away end, had a big gap in front of us. I don't know what the gap was for. No idea. Miles from the pitch, surrounded by a running track. I think there was a football match breaking out somewhere, but I didn't have my
Yeah.
binoculars. But they can hold 60 odd thousand people, so they're making revenue from that. But when would you say the Etihad, the Emirates, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium felt like they became home? Is it to do with memories? Is it to do with games? Is it to do with success? When does it feel like it becomes home, do you think?
I think it is all of those things. And I think it's also just yourself going week in, week out, year after year. And, it probably sounds daft this, but those stadiums themselves starting to not so much maybe feel old, but older. The Etihad now is what, 23 years old.
Mm.
Um, Emirates is 19 years old this year. It's They slowly over time develop their own, you know, histories. They What do they always say? It's like Goodison. It's like it's got a soul. It's got all
Yeah,
this history rolled into it. I think it's just time, mate. And you touched on it before. I think it also depends on the generations coming through. So you'll have loads of generations coming through as time goes on that won't know any different.
mm.
So they'll just think that's the bee's knees anyway. They've got nothing to compare it to. But I also think it's the quality of what's built. Like some of them can be very kind of um, what's the word I'm looking for? It can almost feel like they've just sprang out the ground with no real thought as to you know
Yeah,
um,
soulless, I think you think.
soulless, not really attuned to an identity to the club. The Riverside was a bit like that, and they all sprang up afterwards, like Pride Park and
Yeah,
St Mary's. They were literally built almost like off the peg stadiums. In fairness to Borough, they had a season to build it to fly with the all-seater stadiums.
mm.
Plus, if you think back to that time, not many people were building new stadiums. I know Millwall had recently built the new Den, but that was you didn't have many clubs building brand new grounds. It was unheard of. So the Riverside, when it opened and we all went, it felt very novel and very brand new and slick. But if you remember on the concourses, it was just grey breeze block. It took time to kind of
Yeah,
print an identity into the ground and make it feel more like home. And it's
yeah.
probably felt more like home as time's gone on and generations it is just home rather than they're not comparing the two. I still
Well,
miss
well
Ayers
my,
Park.
my, my son was born the year after we moved to the Riverside, 2 years after we moved to the Riverside. So he's never, I mean, he's heard of Ayers Park and he's seen the videos and stuff,
Yeah,
but, it's an alien environment to him.
yeah,
So, like you say, historically, you get past a certain time. But the Emirates it used to have a really bad reputation for atmosphere, didn't it? Because they,
yeah,
they took the Highbury Wall away, didn't they? Or the Cop, or whatever they
yeah.
used to call it, and it just sort of dissipated into a big ball of a stadium. And it's taken a while, but occasionally certainly on European nights, the atmosphere is pretty damn good, except for that really, really embarrassing tifo last year where they had that. It was like a pathetic little flag with the Gunners kind of crest on it. Some of these clubs, these European clubs, the whole of their stadiums surrounded by tifos and whatever. And
Yeah,
Arsenal put up what can only be described as a big flag, but
yeah,
it was pathetic. But the actual atmosphere once the game kicked off
it
was
was good.
sensational. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I guess it's that kind of thing, is it? Memories of big games and wins, and the Borough.
it's got to be. Surely, it's got to be. And I think some of it must come out. Some of it must also come out of personal preference, what you
Yeah,
like, your nostalgia. You know, I like. I like all stadia. I mean, I know when you're in some, you look at them and you think, God, this could do with, a lick of paint, or
yeah,
it hasn't changed in 30, 40, 50 years. It's starting to look run down. But there's something quite romantic and lovable about that. You can almost feel, 100 years worth of pie and beer and all sorts of stuff, and they're kind of quite wonderful because this, Ellen Road, away fans, the away stand, it's not the greatest. I'm not having a go at Leeds fans, by the way, but it's not. But when I walk in there and I walk around the ground and I walk back out, I still feel proper football stadium,
Oh yeah,
close to the pitch, really noisy, really hostile.
yeah,
Whenever you're walking around it, you just think of the old teams of the 70s and the
mm,
successful teams they've had, and they've all been based there. And I think that's what is hard sometimes when you, especially going from Goodison, you go in from like, using the Everton analogy. You remember all these great players who've played there, and the statues that'll stay there because those players played at that stadium.
yeah,
It is like you've got to create brand new memories, brand new things for fans to get excited and go, oh, do you remember that game?
yeah.
Classic. That it's got to come into it, mate. No matter how good you build that stadium, that's got to be the thing, hasn't it? It's got the fans have got to do it. It's got
It,
to
it,
be.
it's the UEFA Cup nights at Middlesbrough, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
the victories against Spurs in the FA Cup.
yeah.
It's those. It's usually under lights that does it for me. Like I think there's usually something about under lights. But
Oh,
if
night
you
games, absolutely. Yeah.
if you beat Liverpool 3-0 at Hill Dickinson this season, it'll feel like home that day, won't it?
Oh, of course it will. It'll just take off. It's felt good so far, and it does. I've mentioned this a couple of times. It does help when new stadium design facilitates things in terms of noise generation. So the acoustics in the new stadium, the
Hmm.
architect kept talking about it all the time. I was thinking, oh, I'll wait and see if that really is a thing. It really is a thing. You
Yeah,
can really, and the away fans now are in the north stand corner, but when they go on as well, you can really feel the noise from them. So it just echoes around the barrel
mm.
and bounces off everywhere. I mean, I've not been to the new Spurs stadium yet. I really want to go, but apparently a lot of people said the same with that when it really gets going, it's bouncing. The
Yeah.
acoustics in there are superb.
One of my favourites is Leicester's King Power
Yeah,
for the very reason that they, as an away fan, you never sit down, obviously, and we always take a big following,
yeah,
and we bounce it up and down, and we've got a good record there, of recently certainly, and you bounce up and down, and they're announcing, would you please not bounce up and down because you can feel the stadium bouncing. It's really
yeah,
I don't know if it's badly built or badly designed or it's just got a bit of a bit of give in it, but an away game where you're winning and playing well at the King Power literally is
it's good. It's a
it's a
good stadium. I
bouncing
like it, and
bouncing
that's
environment.
it is, and that's another off the peg stadium.
Yeah,
The Amex as well. That's like another. It's slightly more modern, and it's a few different bits, but again, and you mentioning like the G Tech, that's got a cracking atmosphere as well. You know, it, and I think that's also to do with that they moved into that stadium at the start of their Premier League era.
yeah.
So again, and they've played really well. So there's that link, mate, that we're talking about of the fans buy into it. They've got a good team. They've played well there. So instantly, that suddenly makes that home because it's building its own memories very, very quickly.
It's your connectivity, isn't it, with the game, with the pitch, with the players, with the
Yeah,
success or whatever. And like you say, Brentford have played really good football in a really close knit stadium. It's bigger
yeah,
than Griffin Park. I did love Griffin Park though as an away,
yeah.
experience and
I've been there. It's yeah. It was. I liked it as well.
proper. Anyway,
Proper stadium. Yeah.
moving on, legacy, okay? So it's too early for Everton at this stage. You haven't got a legacy after two league games. Uh,
No.
West Ham won their first trophy for eons, the European trophy for several generations, whilst at the London Stadium, right? So, what part do you think having a 60,000 seater stadium and the ability to revenue generate played in that success? Is it the stadium? Was that a catalyst for that? They hadn't won anything for years. Would they have won the Europa Conference? Was it the one? If they were still at Upton Park, do you think? Do new stadiums catapult them over time to a better opportunity?
I'm not so sure in West Ham's case because if you look at that team that won that trophy, would you say that you'd have needed a king's ransom to buy all those players? Declan Rice came through theirs as a youngster after he was released from Chelsea, so
Yeah,
it wasn't like they had to go out and buy him. and they had really good recruitment. They didn't buy Jared Bowen for a lot of money. In fact, they didn't buy a lot of that squad for a lot of money.
That's a good
If
point.
you think about it. So, I think it would be almost disrespectful to say, "Oh, yeah, that was because they were able to go out and buy and spend big on that squad." I don't think they did on that squad. I think that was a really good case of good players who played well as a team, who were well managed by a good coach,
Yeah,
and you could. I mean, they were phenomenal in Europe that season. They were just unstoppable, and I would hazard a guess that I think it'd be a fairly feeble argument to say being at the new ground did that for them.
that's fair.
Um,
Hang
and
on, hang on, hang on. I wasn't making an argument. I was just
oh
asking a
no, no,
question.
no, I mean, I know you.
Don't be
But
find out. Don't be find out with me on our own podcast,
yeah,
mate.
I know. But I just think, yeah, I just think that for me that really comes into what the Holy Grail is. A bit
Mm,
like how Forest have structured their team. There's probably a good bit of planning that's gone into there and buying good players, but you can't tell me there's not a lot of luck in there of how they've gelled and become so
yeah,
strong over the last 2 years. There's a lot of luck in football in how you might get players and you think I've got all these players that are, round pegs in round holes. Everything should click. It doesn't work like that, does it? It should do, but it doesn't.
no,
So I don't think the West Ham thing is all to do with new stadia, and I think yeah, but I do sometimes think the new stadia does. Yeah, I think maybe West Ham is not the right example, but I think in other examples, it absolutely is. I think that's where Everton want to get to. They want
yeah.
to use the enhanced hospitality and the enhanced capacity to, generate revenue like the so-called big six as they are, because
Mm.
they're called the big six because they're the most, they make the most money.
Well, if you do that, they'll still penalise you like they're penalising Villa and they're penalising
Yeah,
Newcastle with whatever. And
of course they will. Of
only
course
today,
they will.
Chelsea have got 72 charges have been raised against them by the FA, and that's now Chelsea and Man City. But Everton get one charge and get 3 point deductions, and Forest get four charges and they get point deductions. But we'll never see the back of Chelsea or Man City by the looks of it. Well, let's move on. That's something completely different. Let's talk about Man City. How much of Man City's success in attracting the initial investment that they got was down to the fact that they'd already moved from Main Road? They were a more attractive proposition by being at the Etihad. Do you think the stadium and the potential around the stadium was the thing that attracted that money in the first place? Would they have got that investment if they were still at Main Road with the Kipak stand and all that kind of thing, do we think?
Um, it's a really good question. I would like to think yes, they would, but I have a I have more of a personal interest in that because I was at university in Manchester and I lived near Main Road and I used to go and watch them a lot. And always I always backed Man City because they were, at that time Man United were just coming good and winning the league again for the first time in 30 years, and we're on the cusp of that unbelievable team that they had for the next 15 years. Whereas Man City had been struggling for ages and they were going to dip and go down to the old second division. The old third division, sorry. And so, but everyone that went there, you could feel. I mean, for me being a Middlesbrough lad, and I used to go to Stockport a lot as well because I used to live near Stockport. I love going to Wedgeley Park, still do. I think it's a great classic old ground as well. Fabulous, by the way.
Yeah,
Love Stockport County. Had many a good match day there. I used to love going to Main Road. Loved it. And I always got the sense that they were a massive club, brilliant fans. They'd get 30,000, 35,000 every week, even when they were in the third division, 35,000 fans.
yeah.
And knew a lot of good people, worked in pubs, and I knew a lot of good United and City fans. And I'd like to think that someone would have thought, yeah, that's a really good investment anyway. And maybe we just would have just moved them and built the stadium. But maybe it was the catalyst and accelerated it quicker because of
Yeah.
the actual infrastructure that was there and the fact that it was already money generating, hospitality was good. But let's face it, when they bought that club, they were struggling because the previous owners hadn't done particularly well there.
No.
So maybe new stadia aren't a reason. I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I often wonder, would the Freakins have bought Everton if the new stadium wasn't in place? I'm not so sure they would, because they'd have had to have they'd have had the headache of trying to fund one, and that's where I do have admiration for Mashiri. He was hopeless in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of what it's all about, which is building a team, and thought he could do what Man City and everyone else did, and he just couldn't, and we were hopeless on the pitch. But he did build us a fantastic new stadium, which people have been saying for years they were going to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure the Freakins would have bought us if that stadium hadn't been there.
I think last point really. I think that if you've got a great stadium, the chances are you've also invested in great training facilities. So Middlesbrough have got obviously they had a new stadium in '95. It was identikit, but it was the first of its kind, and it was kind of like a standard kind of football ground. But we also invested in Rockcliffe and the training facilities. You look at Brighton and the Amex, you're not telling me that Brighton isn't a very much more attractive proposition because it's got a great stadium and it's got the infrastructure around it for training. If you're a footballer, and no disrespect to Bournemouth or whatever, or on the south coast, maybe Portsmouth at Fratton, and you're thinking I could go to, let's say they're all in the same division, I can go to Brighton, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, maybe Southampton. You're going to tell me probably the likes of Brighton and Southampton are probably more attractive propositions for footballers because they're playing in front of bigger crowds in better stadiums with better facilities, because the chances are the training facilities have been invested in as well. And I think that might be part of the catalyst for success, which is why ground improvements are not just about capacity, not just about revenue. They're about the attractiveness of a club to potential future players. Would you agree with that?
To a certain extent, I would, yeah. But I do think players do also go to clubs for
money.
And if you're offering the right money, I mean, let's face it, that's just a fact. I was going to say that. I was debating whether to say that, but let's face it, it's true. But I do also think they go because they invest in who's in charge. And I think if you look at Bournemouth, have become a Brentford and a Brighton in terms of how well they recruit. And I've sung the praises of the manager they brought in 2 years ago, who's just been wonderful, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Brilliant due diligence in terms of researching who to bring in, that they knew his style would fit their club. But their recruitment's just been astonishing, and it shows how lazy everyone else's recruiting is, that everyone's just coming, let's just pinch their players. We can't be asked to look at our own, we'll just come and grab yours because you're the best in that area. And I just really hope that Bournemouth particularly can keep recreating that in terms of generating those players, because they've been fabulous to watch. So I do think, stadium great, facilities great, but I think if you're paying players the right money and they're with the right players around them and the right manager, I think that goes out the window, because I think they just want to play for successful teams.
But can you pay the money if you've got a 12,000 seat stadium?
Yeah, on that point, I know where you're coming from there. No, probably it'd be interesting to see what their wage structure is, Bournemouth. No one ever really talks about that because it is such a tiny ground as well.
Yeah.
I don't think people really fully appreciate just how small Bournemouth's ground is. And they want to expand their capacity, don't they? I think they haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, Bournemouth just opened a brand new training facility as well. So
that's state of the art. That, by the way, that looks fantastic.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, Leicester's as well. They opened theirs about 18 months ago, 2 years. That's incredible. So I do, but let's face it, players that's their day in, day out, isn't it? But they almost live for match day, and the match day is the actual ground you go to play your football, not just your everyday where you train. So if you're a footballer, that must be what you're in it for, surely, for the buzz of the crowd, and that stadium and feeling the noise and everything else. Surely, hopefully.
Well, if that's the case on the south coast, you're probably going to go Fratton, aren't you? Because Fratton's got some history. I'm looking forward to going there in October with the Borough, but I'm not knocking, Brighton, Amex. I'm not knocking St Mary's. I'm not knocking, Bournemouth. But I'm finishing off on the point I made earlier. I properly love a proper football ground.
Oh, I do.
And I can't wait to go to Fratton Park. Apparently, it's a bit of a faded beauty, shall we say. It makes Burnley look like Monaco. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, on some respects, how shabby it is, but also a fabulous atmosphere. And I want to finish with the fact that a proper old ground, irrespective of Hill Dickinson, Riverside, Emirates, Etihad, whatever, you can't beat a proper old football ground. I'm going to one on Saturday at Deepdale. We never win there, but hopefully we will. But, it's just a proper ground, isn't it?
It is, and Portsmouth's also got one of the oldest football stands now that Goodison's no longer the men's stadium. It's got the oldest Archibald Leach stand apart from Goodison. So I think they were celebrating it being 100 years old just the other week.
Yeah, cool.
Fabulous stand, and it harks back to when football stadiums were being just quickly built 100 years ago when the game was just starting off and it was in its infancy. So yeah, it's a fabulous ground, fabulous
Excellent.
stand as well. So
Well, listen,
yeah.
thanks for sharing your initial thoughts on the Everton experience, what that might feel like, look like, how long it's going to take to feel like you are home, and I mean
Yeah.
that in the right way, but also some thoughts on where the stadium sits in terms of the development of the club and the attraction of players and all that kind of thing. So hopefully that's been an interesting episode for people listening and watching. We try and keep it relevant and kind of topics that people talk about. And I think it's fair to say that we've had a topic today that's very current because of the Everton situation and because of situations that have come across with the likes of Brentford's digital ticketing and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for watching or listening. We didn't discuss this, Dom, but I think we sort of briefly discussed it. I don't really care about the qualifiers for the World Cup. Well, I don't care at all. Don't really care. I don't care at all. But we've had an international break and we've got another one in October. And I'd just like us to discuss what we think the prospects are in the tournament next year, because we're going to qualify with 15 points out of 5 games, mainly because there's been lots of discussions today, particularly and day before, about England trying to shoehorn in six number 10s because they're all really good players. And I'm interested in, from a football tactics point of view, what we think about that and why it's always been a failure trying to get Lampard, Gerrard and Scholes to play together. Should you just pick a system, whatever? So we're going to talk about England's World Cup prospects in the tournament themselves. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all your favourite platforms, the usual suspects in terms of iTunes and Apple and Spotify and Amazon Music, etc. We've got a group on LinkedIn for those who are on LinkedIn, which is just subscribe to the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast with Nick and Dom. And we're on YouTube as well. So thank you, Dom. Thanks as ever. We'll see you for episode 13 in next recording. I'm sure you'll be surprised that we're on episode 13 by the time we get there. Another little one for Andy. Another little one for
Absolutely.
Andy. Yeah. And also thanks. I had a couple of people this week suggesting subjects, and when we do pick those subjects, we'll give you a shout out for that as well. So please feel free to do that as well for us. So that's been the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast from me, Nick and Dom. And we'll see you again for episode 13 very soon. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Nick. I echo what you said. Yeah, loving it. And thanks, everyone. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.